I got you.
All right, creatures of the night, welcome to Talking Taker, episode 210 of our encyclopedic exploration, digging up the career of the greatest professional wrestling character of all time, The Undertaker. My name is Alex Dorio. I want to thank you for joining us for yet another round of Dead Man Talking, and I am joined, as always, by, I think he's in there. Somewhere.
Oh,
Hey, man. It's all right.
bad.
Reading the
I was just
paper over there?
Reading the Manscaped Daily News.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
You a subscriber to that?
Yes, I am.
I saw
It comes analog. It comes in print form.
It does. I saw you reading the obituaries on there. That's very timely.
It is very timely, as I'm wearing this shirt.
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, it's timely for that. You know, rest in peace, Jerry Jarrett.
Yeah.
And the Genius, and
Yes.
Jay Briscoe. I mean, sad month
Right.
in the world of wrestling. But hey, let me finish my introduction. He is my tag team partner, my wrestling buddy, my fellow creature of the night. He has earned all of those names. He has earned his reputation. Earned. You are in. Earned. All of those things.
There it is.
Yeah.
Got it.
Mr.
Sorry.
Travis White. And Travis, we'll talk about Manscaped here in just a minute. But Travis, what we're really here to talk about, it's a sad occasion. It's been 10 years since we lost one of the all-time greats in the world of professional wrestling, one of the essential characters and pivotal characters of this podcast. Paul Bearer passed away 10 years ago this month of March. And so we decided what better time for us to honor him and celebrate him. We've never done a full episode dedicated to Paul Bearer. So tonight we're going to right that wrong. We're going to cover the life and times of Paul Bearer, talk about his entire career, his run with The Undertaker, his importance to him, and celebrate him as he deserves to be celebrated, dude. Because, what does Paul Bearer mean when it comes to the Undertaker? What's his significance there? How could you state his importance to that?
I mean, he was the jelly to the peanut butter. I mean, he was. They go hand in hand. I mean, they really do. I don't know that the character would have had the legs initially, with the characterization of him without Paul Bearer. I really don't. And so I think he was very vital to the origin and the first several years, 5-6 years of the Undertaker story. I don't think we'd be here today talking about Mark Calloway's 32-year run as Undertaker without Paul Bearer. So.
I think you're exactly right. And he's even so much more than just that run with The Undertaker as well.
Yeah.
He had a long history in wrestling before he even became Paul Bearer. And he had an incredible run, without The Undertaker. You could say the same thing about his run with Kane. Kane would not be Kane. He would not have had his Hall of Fame career without the special touch of Paul Bearer, his father, guiding his career. And he did a lot of stuff outside of WWE, some really strange stuff, some interesting stuff. We're going to talk about all of that as well. So we're going to try to honor him and celebrate his legacy here, and continue to keep it alive 10 years after his tragic passing. Very special episode, very fun episode. I'm very much looking forward to it. But, as we do here on the podcast, we like to cover our monthly Undertaker sightings and all of the news and events that involve The Undertaker post-retirement. And boy, there was quite a lot in the month of February. We got quite a bit to talk about here, Travis. But
he's a busy little man.
Of
course, it's every time we record an episode, the next week, he does all this stuff. And then we have to wait till next month to talk about it. It's insane. It happens every month.
Well, it's crazy, man. We started this podcast thinking The Undertaker was retired, and then, as the years have gone by, he's continued to be active and continues to do stuff that needs to be talked about, is worthy of being discussed, even 3 years now after he's had his final match. So as
It's
we
like when, like my parents, your parents are both now retired. My parents are busier now with stuff than they were when they were working. Like they're like doing stuff and like doctor's appointments and
well, yeah, half the
popping up
time it's
here.
doctor's appointments.
Hey, I'm not
Yes.
saying it's good stuff. I'm just saying like I feel like they're on the go a lot more now. Like that's what Taker's doing. He's retirement and he's just doing what he wants to do, man. Busy.
I asked my mom and dad if they wanted to come up here this week to see their granddaughter, and they literally had a doctor's appointment every single day. One of them or both of them. It's like, all right, well, maybe next week.
I have to do the same. Like, Mom, Dad, you want to come up in like 4 months? Do you have any appointments that week? Like, do you? Yeah, I have to do the same thing with them. So, anyway,
Can't wait to get there, man. Can't wait to get there.
buddy.
Well, we got some special news here today because this month's section of Undertaker sightings is brought to you by a very special sponsor. We are very excited, very proud to say that the Undertaker sightings and Talking Taker is brought to you this month by Manscaped. That's right, Manscaped. You know them, you love them. They are the leader in men's grooming, and over 7 million men have jumped on board with Manscaped, and Talking Taker has as well. We are excited to say they are sponsoring the show, and they have an incredible offer for all you creatures of the night out there, our Pod Street crew. If you want to be looking good from head to toe, if you want to get the beard trimmed and looking tight, if you want to stop looking like a dead man, if you want to clean up your Death Valley region, if you want to do whatever, you can get 20% off your entire order at manscaped.com, plus free shipping worldwide. And as someone who ships stuff on eBay and sells random stuff, that is no joke. That is quite the discount right there. 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com by using the code TAKEREASY. Travis's catchphrase, you hear it every week here on the pod. All one word, TAKEREASY, manscaped.com. Get your free shipping and 20% off. And dude, they were so kind enough to send us an incredible kit of all of their products, dude. They sent us the Beard Hedger, the Weed Whacker, the Lawn Mower, the Crop Preserver, the Crop Reviver. They sent us boxers. They sent us a T-shirt, dude. I know you've been using it.
Moves. They sound like finishing moves. Signature moves too.
It is their signature moves right there, no doubt about it, dude. I know you've been using it this past month. I mean, what has been the highlight for you?
Dude, this Weed Whacker, aside from being one that I do believe that Charles Wright would enjoy the name of, I do this one. Because see, my 4-year-old daughter, she'll look at me at least once a week. And just, when you're talking to somebody, but they're not making eye contact, they're looking at some other part of your body. She's staring at my nose. And she'll say, Daddy, why do you have so much hair in your nose? I mean, I'm not doing this for this commercial or for this ad. I'm doing it in real life. She legit does it. So when I got this Weed Whacker in my little pack, I was so excited. I whacked the weeds, and I went out there. I was like, "Look, honey," and she was like, "I like it." So life changing. My 4-year-old no longer throws me under the bus for having hair all up in my beak, thanks to Manscaped.
Well, Paul Bearer, he would often he'd have the urn, and some of his opponents would come out to combat the urn. They might have a rag filled with ether, soaking that ether there, and without the Weed Whacker, maybe you could block the smell if you hadn't had that there. But you prevented that, and maybe you made yourself more vulnerable now that you got the Weed Whacker. But that's okay. That's okay. It's a great product, dude. I gotta say, you're clean as a baby on the face right there. But the number one for me has been the Beard Hedger. Dude, you guys see it if you're watching this on YouTube.
Yeah, looks good.
It does. It's trimmed up. I like to keep a beard. I like to keep it long. And the awesome thing about this, it's literally, I've been having a beard pretty much ever since I could. Since like 18, 19 years old, I've pretty much always had a beard for most of my life. And never found a great beard trimmer. But the awesome thing about this one, it is... you can change the guard on it just with a click. There's just one piece to it, one guard to it. Yeah. I've bought other razors that have 5 different settings on there. This one
wind up breaking them. You wind up losing the guards, or one fall. The teeth. If the end tooth fall breaks off of one of your guards, you're screwed, man.
God forbid you're traveling and you gotta pack them on there. That's the incredible thing about this beard hedger. It's just clickable. You can change it. I keep it. I do it at the absolute longest one because I want to keep all the length on there. Or you can pop it off. You know, you gotta trim the neck. You got everything off of there. I freaking love this thing. And it's one of their newest products. They're new to the beard game and to the facial grooming game. You know, their standard is the lawnmower to keep your Death Valley region clean. But I mean, the beard hedger for me, that's where it's at. And I know the other product you have loved, Travis, is the boxer shorts, man. It's not just the electronics. It's not just the creams and the sprays. They got clothing as well.
They do, man. These boxers are incredible, and like they're just the right fit. Good for you. They feel great. I actually wound up ordering some more that they didn't seem. I mean, I paid for these. I'm so excited to get some more. I actually ordered
and you used
2 packs of 6. I used the code Take Her Easy.
That's right.
To get 20% off. Absolutely. So I've ordered some. I've encouraged my buddies up here to order some too. They're great. They feel fantastic on you. It's like they're not even there. It feels great. You just move around like nothing there. So it's awesome. That's all the detail I'll go into, but it's fantastic. I do love them. They're just soft and they just feel wonderful.
Absolutely.
Oh, I was going to say about the beard trimmer. Like I'm always baby face, like you said, because my wife doesn't like when I have facial hair because it's itchy or whatever, you know, and kissing or snuggling or it's itchy, or I just can't keep it. It doesn't look right on me. I can't keep it groomed. Well, now since I got this, I told her, I was like, honey, what do you think about try to grow it out? I'll use the Manscaped stuff. It'll be tight, nice, and fresh. And she's like, I think you should try it. So
I think you should give it a shot.
We might give it a shot now that I have some
Sample the
excellent tools. Yeah, excellent tools to use to help keep it in shape.
Well, you know, we want to encourage you to give all of your other grooming projects the last ride. We want to encourage you to toss them aside.
Yeah.
Head to manscaped.com, and, you know, if you're babyface like Travis, maybe you don't need the beard hedger. Maybe you need the Performance Package 4.0 that gets you the lawnmower, the weed whacker, the crop preserver, the crop reviver, the travel case, which is legit one of the nicest items I've ever owned in my entire life. Super
really
nice travel case, t-shirt, boxer shorts. It gets you all of that in the Performance Package 4.0. Look around on the website, try something out, give them a shot, because you're getting 20% off and free shipping, which you just can't beat. Manscaped.com. Use the code TAKEREASY, all one word, TAKEREASY. Take Her Easy, 20% off, manscaped.com. And let us know. Send us a tweet, send us a screenshot, send us a message. Let us know that you use that code. You're supporting the show and you're supporting the fine folks at Manscaped. Why don't you give them a shot, folks?
Absolutely. Take Her Easy.
Absolutely.
20% off.
20% off. Well, they've brought us the Undertaker sighting segment here tonight. Let's get into it, Travis. Because when we last left you, we were getting prepared for the Royal Rumble. I know, you know, by the time this is coming out, this seems like old news, but I think we ought to reference at least that the Undertaker's wife, Michelle McCool, had a pretty excellent showing at the 2023 Women's Royal Rumble. I really dug her presentation, her coming out of the crowd.
Ugg boots.
With her kids there. Something never been done. I thought that was really really cute.
So I had about 9 guys over watching the Rumble that night. It was awesome. My kids watched it. It was a fantastic night. And we were sitting there, and during the Women's Rumble, they show Michelle McCool and Trey, who went to SummerSlam with us. He goes, what if she is in the match?
Oh,
we're
really?
like, no. And so then, like, when she gets called, it was like, dang it, dude. I'm like, it was awesome. We were freaking out because that was pretty cool to see her. Yeah, I love that she just had the Ugg boots on and like her regular wear. She wasn't like she wasn't like Superman, you know, always ready to go with her outfit underneath. So that was pretty cool. And she lasted, I think it was like 15 or 20 minutes or something in there. So she was in there for a good long haul. So I say this year, you know, as of this recording, they have not announced one Hall of Fame person. And that is insane because it's in Hollywood. I say let's go Michelle McCool.
I think unquestionably. I think that was a good boost for her case right there. I think now would be the right time. Undertaker went in last year.
Yep.
He can be sitting in the crowd, you know, watching the kids this year and sitting and watching her. I think that would be awesome. He actually commented on her performance on Twitter, said he was so proud of her. Great to see her get back in the ring. He also said it was a pleasure meeting at Hardy Music. He killed it with his performance. And, you know,
he watched something else.
You can't, not even the Undertaker can be right 100% of the time, you know, swing and a miss.
Stick with George Strait.
He did have his one dead man show, Royal Rumble weekend, and of course, he's got some more lined up throughout the next few weeks, heading into WrestleMania as well. I did.
Yeah,
read...
we're recording this before Elimination Chamber, so just to be, because he will have had another one.
Yeah.
At Montreal, and then 2, I think, for Mania, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, awesome.
I did read one little bit of a recap of the Royal Rumble one. Apparently, Michelle McCool came out and joined him for a little bit of it.
Oh,
and
sweet.
He also had some comments about his appearance at Raw 30, which we're going to talk about here in just a second as well. He talked about why he did the Biker Taker character there, and said he really felt like he kind of said goodbye to the dead man at Survivor Series 2020, and then again at WrestleMania. He kind of laid it to rest, and he thinks, from this point forward, if he does make some more cameos, it'll probably be in the Biker Taker character. Awesome. Never say never that he might bring back the dead man, but he just feels like it makes more sense, and he wants to honor those farewells that he gave to the dead man. And lets him be a little bit more of himself now too, now that he's showing that side of his personality. So going forward, if we do see him, it'll probably be in that fashion.
Awesome. I love that. That's I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I agree. And then he had some Undertaker had some interviews, some podcast interviews, things like that. He talked about I'm trying to pull up my notes. I know I sent it to you.
There's
one. I can't
remember.
remember.
They haven't released it as of this recording, but Ariel Helwani interviewed him for BT Sport. I know, and he said it's one of his favorite interviews he's ever done. But as of this recording, it's not released out in the public yet. So I'm looking forward to that. Now, I think it was recorded before the end of the Royal Rumble. So he talked about. I saw a snippet. He talked about how the Sami Zayn Bloodline thing is the best thing in wrestling. Which I agree with. But it was before the turn and the chair shot her around the world.
Well, he said something on there. I can't find my screenshot of it, but he basically the interviewer was asking him about what he said to Bray Wyatt. That whisper he gave to him, and the interviewer said that Taker said something like, I'm always there for you, man. You've got my number. You can call me whenever you need me. Which I sent that to you, and we were like, oh, that's cool. That makes a lot of sense for him to say that. And then he posted on somebody's comment on Instagram talking about that interview. He said, dude, you took me totally out of context. That's not at all what I said. But, that's going to be between me and Bray, but that's not what I said to him. So I feel like I was surprised to hear him to read about what he would have said, because I figured he probably would never reveal that.
Exactly.
And so it makes more sense that he's trying to keep that, under the radar.
Yeah, I think that's what's happening. I didn't believe that for 1 second when they were like, Undertaker reveals what he said. I'm like, no, you misread that whole whatever it was, and he's not gonna say. He knows how much it means to Bray.
Did you ever see Lost in Translation with Bill Murray and Scarlett Johansson back in the day?
Probably.
It kind of ends.
Yeah.
He whispers something in her ear, and we never know about it. They've never talked about what it is, and I feel like that's what's going to be between Bray and Undertaker, man. That was the first thing I thought of when that happened.
If we can bring Bill Murray in this podcast, I'm for it.
We haven't done enough of that,
No, that's right.
He's in the new Ant-Man movie. Did you know that?
Apparently, for about a few minutes.
There you go.
It's enough. That's good. That's all you need.
Speaking of Bill Murray, not at all, but Matt Hardy, the Bill Murray, not really. The Extreme Life of Matt Hardy. You ever listen to this podcast, Travis?
Every now and then I listen to it at 1.5 speed while I'm driving somewhere. If I see a recap or something that's a cool thing. What I do like, when you sent me this link, you had told me about where it was. Well, the next day he put up just a snippet of this section. So I just got to listen to that little 8-minute section. Only took me 6.5 minutes, so I listened to it on 1.5x.
Well, why don't you tell us about it then? Because he did an entire episode on his podcast about the Undertaker, and not to bash anybody's podcast, they retweeted us, gave us the old Matt Hardy retweet on Twitter, and it just wasn't a lot of meat on the bone. I don't think our listeners necessarily need to listen to the whole thing. It's not really a lot of new revelations in there. They just kind of talk about things that Matt Hardy was a fan of the Undertaker throughout his career, but he did tell this story, which I had never heard about, man. Why don't you recap it?
talks about at Survivor Series 2005, I believe it was, when Undertaker comes back against Randy Orton. Is that when he kicks the
You bust out the casket.
bust out the
it's in
casket?
flames.
Yeah. So Matt Hardy was he had just moved to SmackDown from his feud with Edge on Raw after he had gotten fired and came back. Still pretty hot, even though he lost that whole feud. Still pretty hot. Fans were all behind him. Moved to SmackDown, and he talks about how he was kind of not sure what they were doing with him, and he was still a little disgruntled because he hadn't really been doing much. But at the end of the show, they're supposed to have all these guys in the ring, and Taker's big comeback and everything. And he said he had a conversation with Vince, and Vince told him, like, you don't have to take a choke slam or anything. We want you to save face, but we want just be surprised, whatever it is, and give the reaction, and then just powder out. But you don't need to take all the beatings from Taker. Like, I think he beat up the Spanky and all kinds
The
of guys.
Gemini.
Yeah, just all kind of J-Bron. So, again, they were like, Matt Hardy's on a different level, those guys, so we want him to be there, but not. And so, anyway, fast forward to the end of the show. Matt Hardy's down there in the ring with a bunch of guys and jobbers and regular guys, too. And anyway, Taker comes out. Well, when he actually appears and reveals himself, Matt Hardy doesn't really sell it. He admits, like, I was just kind of in a bad mood. I was like, why am I doing this? Like, what is this? Is so dumb. Like, I deserve better than this. So he doesn't really sell it at all. Just kind of is there, okay, and then powders out, doesn't take chokeslam. Well, anyway, they get to the back, and I think they're watching it back or something, or he walks back through, and I think somebody fusses at him about it. Like, why didn't you sell? And then I think it was the next day at catering, Taker walks up to him and says, like, hey, what was going on last night? And so they talk about it, and Taker just says, like, okay, well, here's what's going to happen. And so I think JBL was the one that told Taker about it, of course. So JBL told Taker what happened. And the next day, Taker goes and talks to him. And then for the next, 3 months, he just basically jobs out and doesn't do a lot. And then I think after the Royal Rumble kind of heading into WrestleMania, he kind of picks up some more steam. But he was like, I paid my penance. He's like, they're right. Like, at the time, I was frustrated.
Yeah.
But, and John Alba interviewing him is like, is that something that, you were mad about? He's like, no. He's like, I did the rookie thing. I was an idiot. He's like, that guy's a legend. I should have done what I was told to do. I did not take the instructions and execute properly, So I'm supposed to execute what my boss tells me to do, and I didn't, and I have more respect for that guy. So he's like, I don't blame him at all. And he's like, we did the right thing. And then later on, after those 3 months were up or whatever, he said Taker talked to him. Was like, all right, we're good. And he's like, yeah. And they moved on. So I just thought, what an old school way to take it. That would never happen nowadays. Matt Hardy's, if Matt Hardy were some young guy now, he'd be on Twitter bashing it and this and that and the other and whatever, making these, subtle tweets or this and that or asking for his release. But he handled it like an adult. He is wrong. He was wrong to not give Taker that reaction.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's what I enjoyed about it. Yeah, he really owned it, and he wasn't bitter about it. And,
no.
He talked about he deserved it. He deserved to get Viscera's little
that's right,
humping
the big
done
wiggle
to
or whatever. Yeah.
He's like that, but it was interesting to hear him say, he's like, I think John Alba asked him, he's like, do you think Undertaker, do you think he did that deliberately with Vince, or was that something from the office? He says, oh, I know Undertaker.
Yeah.
I know he talked to Vince and
exactly.
He did that to me, which is that's not something you hear a lot of wrestlers talk about. It's something we speculate about a lot.
Right.
But it was interesting to hear him say that. But again, he didn't say he was bitter about it. He said, I deserved it. I was in a bad place mentally. I shouldn't have done that. And, I took it like a man. And that's probably why, he didn't get fired or released from it.
Exactly.
And continued to have a great career after getting buried for a couple months, is that he knew, okay, I messed up. I got to eat crow for a little while. I got to eat Viscera's finisher for a little while, and then go about my business. But that's a cool story. If you want to, just kind of fast forward to that. There's some other good snippets in there. Go check it out. It's a podcast dedicated to the Undertaker on Matt Hardy's podcast. But then the big news, man, the main event. We got to talk about this. 24 years after his first Super Bowl commercial, in the WWE Super Bowl commercial back in 1999, The Undertaker came out of nowhere, this surprise Super Bowl commercial for DraftKings, alongside a plethora of other stars like Kevin Hart and Tony Hawk and Ludacris. Dude, did you see this coming?
No, not at all. I did not see it coming at all. And I remember you sent it to me, and I was like, what is going on in this world. Like, but him and Kevin Hart must have hit it off in the ice cold bath
I
thing.
guess so.
So maybe he's tight with old Rock too. You know, the Rock and Kevin Hart are like best buds. So
Ooh,
that'd
maybe
be
he'll
nice.
be in the
But
next Jumanji movie.
maybe, yeah. Jumanji 3 with 3 eyes,
Oh man.
like the Wii with 2 eyes. Anyway, I did not see this coming at all. I did not expect to see Taker on a Super Bowl commercial. Not in this year.
There were some pictures on Twitter a couple months ago of all the celebrities on there, and people were wondering, like, what the heck is this for? And I'd kind of forgotten about it. And then the commercial came out, and it was like, okay, there you go. And it's pretty cool because it just, we say this a lot with a lot of things we cover on the Undertaker sightings these days. It just really speaks to what a big star he is. Like I said, he's on there. The people who made this commercial are saying the Undertaker has the same cultural cash as
relevancy,
Ludacris, Tony Hawk, Kevin Hart. I mean, those are household names. Like, my mom probably knows who all those people are. She knows who the Undertaker is because of me, but she probably knows who all those other people are too. I mean, and that's a big deal.
Yeah, they didn't go to Rock, Austin, Cena. They didn't go to them. They went, and Rock probably would have done it because he's boys with Kevin Hart. They went to Undertaker.
Yeah, maybe.
So that's pretty sweet.
One of 3 wrestlers on Super Bowl commercials this year.
Yeah, Batista and Cena were in commercials.
Oh, Batista was too?
He as a preview for Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh, yeah, Guardians
trailer.
had one. Yeah, and Fast 9. And then Brodus Clay was in it.
Oh, yeah. Too. That's right. Tyrus was in a commercial for Fox Nation or something. Yeah, so 4 wrestlers.
Yeah, dude.
Good deal.
He really fits in with that crew. Undertaker, Batista, and Cena. Put Tyrus right up there.
There you go, baby. Somebody call his mama.
Yikes. Anyway, pretty cool, dude. Pretty wild that we're sitting here in 2023 talking about the Undertaker in a Super Bowl commercial. Again, just we can't predict the things that are going to come up here on this podcast. That's why we've kept it alive here after we originally let it rest in peace. But thanks again to Manscaped for sponsoring our Undertaker sightings segment here. Once again, don't forget manscaped.com, 20% off your order there and free shipping with the code TAKEREASY. Go give it a shot. Well, Travis, let's do it, man. Let's talk about the life and times of Paul Bearer. And we've got some notes that we've taken here. We're going to kind of give you a broad overview of his life, his career here. I'm sure there's going to be some stuff we leave out, but I kind of used the special on Peacock called The Mortician that came out during The Undertaker's 30-year celebration back in 2020, sort of as a outline and to gather a lot of these facts. But a lot of this other stuff, came from the internet as well. But that's kind of the baseline for a lot of this stuff. And he was born William Alvin Moody on April 10th, 1954 in Mobile, Alabama. And he talks about, they have an archived interview with Paul Bearer in the Mortician documentary about how he was obsessed with death from a young age. And he credits that to the Kennedy assassination happening when he was a young kid. I know Randy Turco is also obsessed with JFK, so I'm sure he'll appreciate that. But he watched, the funeral on TV and was obsessed with death from a young age, and says he kind of made himself to be a neighborhood funeral director and would always hold ceremonies for people's pets when they died in the neighborhood whenever he was a kid.
So he had a pet cemetery.
He's the inspiration for that right there.
There you go.
Not only that, he was also obsessed with pro wrestling at a young age as well. He would hang out at the shows before they happened, the local shows. He'd try to help put up the ring. He'd go take pictures around ringside. And, of course, he wanted to be a wrestler. He wrestled with his friends in the backyard. And he did become a wrestler. After enlisting in the Air Force and serving 4 years in the Air Force, he took some training and started working for some indie promotions when he was off duty. He actually had a wrestling license, which they have pictures of, his actual wrestling license, which that's just such a great old school memento. Those are things you literally used to have back then. Licensed by the state, and wrestled as Mr. X and the Masked Embalmer, which sounds like a great creator wrestler somebody should make on a video game.
WWE 2K23. We want to see the Masked Embalmer.
I want to see it.
I want to see it. Mr. X. How many guys do you think wrestled as Mr. X? I mean, there's probably
That's the
been
go-to, man.
497,000 wrestlers as Mr. X.
Yep.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, yeah, then he's going to debut as a manager under the name Percival Pringle the Third in 1978, which means there are two more
Yeah, he was the third.
before him. Yeah. But
But
after his-
that's a great wrestling name because not only is the Percival Pringle just pompous and ridiculous, but adding the third on there is just a
Yeah.
great touch. Like, give me a break with this guy. You just automatically
Yeah.
hate him. You don't even have to
Yeah.
see him. You just hear that
No.
name and you're like, I hate this guy.
Exactly. It's like, it just gives that arrogance about it. So it's really clever. But after his first son's birth, he's going to pull out of the wrestling business and get a degree in mortuary science, and became a certified embalmer, mortician, and was trying to look for a more steady job because the wrestling business wasn't, they feed you with a hot dog and a napkin basically and a handshake.
If you're
So,
lucky, you got a napkin.
if you're lucky.
You usually had to use your shirt or your mask, wipe the
So-
mustard off.
And well, if you're looking for a steady job, what better place to get a job than as a mortician? Because guess what? Everybody dies.
You're always in business. That's what
Yeah.
my mother-in-law is a funeral director. She's worked at a funeral home for 30 years, and it's a lucrative business. They make good money there because they're never short of work. It's
so weird.
recession proof. It really
Yeah.
is, man. And
It's weird. You don't ever see like, oh, this funeral home is going out of business.
It doesn't
Like, no,
happen.
they're always in business.
doesn't happen.
I never thought of it that way.
I mean, we've talked about it, and it's not for everybody. I certainly
Right,
couldn't do
sure.
it, but really though, they do provide a very important service, and it's she sees it as a ministry. You're really helping families in their worst times, but business wise, business is always good at the in the mortuary business. You're never out of business. Well, he did that quite a bit, and after a few years in 1985, he just couldn't put that love of wrestling away.
I get it.
Kept getting drawn back into it, and this is where he really got his big break in championship wrestling from Florida and in world-class championship wrestling in Texas. And what a murderer's row, talking about the mortuary industry, but listen to this lineup of people that he managed back during this time in the 80s. Rick Rude, who was a close friend of his. Mick Foley. Stunning Steve Austin. Lex Luger, who I believe he said he managed in his very first match. Matt Bourne, a legend. Doink the Clown. And a little kid named Texas Red, who wrestled under a hood. Real
short.
name Mark Calloway.
Yeah.
Would go on to do a few things, which, not only is that an incredible lineup, but a bunch of guys that he would go on to have such ridiculous history with. I mean, you can't write this stuff, dude. It's honestly crazy how much of like a movie his life sounds like.
It really
is. Because it's wild.
Yeah, and that right there, that list you just said, those are all, surefire Hall of Famers, I don't know if Matt Bourne, that character Doink should be in the Hall of Fame. I always joke about Coco Beware, but Doink, dude, if you were a kid in the 90s, you knew who Doink was, so
Yeah.
it's just awesome. Yeah, it's just, anyway, it's crazy. But yeah, then Rick Rude, again, is a friend of his. He puts in a good word for Percy Pringle to come to the WWF at the time. So Road Warrior Hawk is the one who apparently came up with the name Paul Bear. So
Right.
thank you, Hawk.
Love that pun, and he just like. When did you realize that Paul Bear was a pun? Because as a kid, I had no idea.
I had no idea. I think my brother had to finally tell me, like, years later, like, it's a pallbearer. Like, what does that mean? Like, at a funeral, the guy that carries. I'm like 6. I don't. Like, this is when I first had watched. So, I don't know what you're talking about, So yeah, I was probably 10 or 12 by the time I saw it, and he's like, Paul Bearer, like it's a Paul Bearer.
Well, it's
and Vince loves a good like name, especially in those days. He did, but like that one could be an actual name. Like Erwin R. Shyster, not real, not even close. Isaac Yankum, not close, but like Paul Bearer could be a real name. Yeah.
Well, we're going to talk about this when he makes his debut. Vince is on commentary, and when he says the name for the first time, Vince just does this groan on commentary, which is funny because he loves it, but like he's acting like it's so ridiculous. But Vince loves just like bad humor too. Well, when he comes to WWF, his look as Percy Pringle, he's got this bleach blonde hair. He said he's trying to look like Bobby Heenan in the Mortician documentary. Bobby Heenan was like his idol, who he tried to emulate. Well, WWF, when they wanted to align him with The Undertaker here, they wanted to give The Undertaker this manager. They said, well, you can't have bleach blonde hair. We could dye your hair black, do this makeup, look like Gomez Adams, basically. And he said that was the hardest thing for him to do. He was so attached to his hair. But when the first check came in and he saw the numbers on that check, he said, I never really thought about it again after that. Never bothered me.
Not worried about it. Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
Well, he makes his debut in the WWF pretty close to us, man. We're both originally from Augusta, Georgia. He makes his debut on January 28, 1991 in Macon, Georgia. Weird to think about WWF running TV in Macon, Georgia, but there you go.
Yeah, that's WCW country. That's crazy.
He made his debut on the Brother Love show. Of course, we all know, listen to this podcast, Brother Love was the man who brought The Undertaker into the World Wrestling Federation, his original manager. But Brother Love here says The Undertaker, he requires love 24 hours a day. And that he's just a little too busy to give him that sort of management he deserves. So he presents to us Brother Bearer. And like I say, you hear Vince groan on commentary. But he is already just 100% into this character from moment one, second one on TV. And it's wild because he is so... Paul Bearer is so different than Percy Pringle, which for years I'd never seen any Percy Pringle footage, but nowadays you can find it pretty easily, and it's just so crazy what a big difference, what a big switch that was, and tells you how talented a performer he was that he was able to make that shift.
Oh yeah, exactly. Because some guys, when they switch characters or whatever, you just like, okay, that's Lord Tensai just Albert again with stick on henna tattoos or whatever. It's like he really got, he like method acted here, dude. Like he went Christian Bale or like Daniel Day-Lewis on us, and he like got into a whole new character. And like you said, he was in it from the second he appeared on the screen, just like The Undertaker was at his debut. Like he was in it. He was set in that role, which is so much different than the guy we saw wrestle in Japan or Booger Red or Texas Red or whatever, Texas Roadhouse, whatever his name was, all those names he had, Mark Callis. Like The Undertaker was so different. So both of them just committed to this Vince McMahon creation and went all in with it. And thank God, because it paid off, and it paid very well.
I'm so glad you said that, because I wanted to bring that up too. Like, I think that's why this works so well, is you got two guys that are 100% committed to something that is on paper absolutely ridiculous and absurd and should not work. But the fact that both of them are in it 100% and give themselves over to it and understand that the only way this is going to work is if we do like commit 100%. We're in character on screen. We're in character when we walk out of the building, and they both love doing it and both, just benefited from each other in that way. And I think it was so cool. Brother Love and Undertaker just didn't click in that same way, and I'm so glad they made that change early on and recognized that. It really made Taker stand out to have his own personal manager. You could have put him with Bobby Heenan or Jimmy Hart or Mr. Fuji, whatever, but it really made him special that he's not just in these other guys' stables. He's got his own personal manager. That's
a great point, because, like I said, back then, a lot of guys, it was a manager for
every heel had a manager.
Yeah, they all had it, but it was like one manager for a whole group of them. So, yeah, very, very cool. Set him apart. Well, he's going to make his first pay-per-view appearance with The Undertaker at WrestleMania 7 on March 24th, 1991. Going to help guide Taker to victory over Jimmy Snuka there in his first victory there. So, yeah, then he's going to go on and debut just a gem of a show The Funeral Parlor. That's going to debut on Superstars at the end of March. So just 6 days after WrestleMania.
Yeah, that's the first time we see the Funeral Parlor. It's your standard Piper's Pit interview segment. We've seen countless of them throughout the years. There are a dime a dozen in WWF. But yeah, the Funeral Parlor.
Some work, some don't.
Yeah, the Funeral Parlor worked. It stood out. It shows you how confident they were with Paul Bearer that just a couple months into his run, they're giving him this segment that he's got to carry on the mic. He's doing angles with Undertaker, but he's also doing other angles on there and having other guests on there as well. A lot of memorable stuff in the Funeral Parlor through the years, from Taker locking Ultimate Warrior in the casket. Jake the Snake turned the tide on Taker and locked his hand in the casket one time. You had a lot of stuff with Flair and Hogan and Taker on the Funeral Parlor. Again, just really setting Taker apart, setting Bearer apart, and making them feel special, feel like stars.
Yeah, well, speaking of them being stars, he's going to be with some high profile superstars at this point. Regis and Kathy Lee, Taker and Paul Bearer are going to be on. We can laugh about that now, but that was a big deal back then, man. It's huge.
If you weren't around back then, I don't think we can really put over what a big deal that was. That show was important.
Yeah, there's so many morning shows now because there's so many networks and so many streamings this and streaming that. But back then, that was like the morning show, live with Regis and Kathy Lee. And they were on there before the Survivor Series and Royal Rumble 94. So just making multiple appearances on there. So good times. And yeah, like I said, just puts them into a different echelon of superstardom, honestly. And they're not really there that far into their career.
Yeah. And Regis loved wrestling. He was at WrestleMania 7, had a segment with Undertaker and Paul Bearer, who was getting measured for his casket there at WrestleMania 7. But yeah, we've talked about Undertaker being on Hot Ones and on Sneaker Shopping. Honestly, I think those shows are more important now than talk shows on TV, like YouTube shows like that. That's kind of the level, I would say, that Regis and Kathy Lee was. I mean, they would have Michael Keaton on, promoting Batman, the same episode that Undertaker would be on there. That's the kind of celebrities and stars that they would have on there. So yeah, it's a huge deal for Undertaker and Paul Bearer to be on Regis and Kathy Lee. And you can find these segments on YouTube. In character. They're quite funny. Regis is taking it seriously. Kathy Lee's kind of joking. She's pulling faces at Paul Bearer, but Paul Bearer's just going 100% along with it, just making faces back at her. And he's, in character, just improvising and going along with whatever he says. It's pretty incredible to watch.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
Well, of course, Paul Bearer leads Undertaker to the WWF Championship, Survivor Series 91. It has that brief title reign there, but Paul Bearer got a great track record. Already got a WWF Championship under his fold. And, they have this incredible run as heels throughout 91, but I honestly think Paul Bearer came into his own when The Undertaker became a babyface, which you wouldn't think would be the case because managers and babyfaces don't really go along together. Having a manager is more of a heel thing. There's time, Macho Man had Miss Elizabeth and, that worked. And there's random instances where that worked, but it's definitely more of a heel thing. But I think having Bearer stay along with Undertaker, even when he's a babyface, clicked for Undertaker. And I really think it's because the Undertaker character worked so well back then because he was a man of few words.
Yeah.
Didn't want him having these promos. Let me tell you something, brother, with the Mean Gene or anything like that. But to have Bearer along talking to him in the high, squeaky voice.
Yeah.
And Undertaker could finish it off with a rest in peace at the end. It was a great dichotomy. And boy, you could just tell how much fun Paul Bearer was having when he got to become a babyface as well.
That's it, man. When we talked about that endlessly on this podcast, just seeing how much we had fun watching him have fun, going back and revisiting stuff, just seeing how over the top, but he knew where to draw the line for his character. He wasn't just over the top for the sake of being that way, like Johnny Fairplay or something. He was
sure.
He was there, like knew when to reel it in, but like, he was having a blast, dude. He's having a blast, which makes us, the fans, whether we're kids, teenagers, adults, have fun vicariously through him. So he really helped a lot. Just love it.
He truly was having fun. He got to have some big moments. SummerSlam 93, I think, stands out because he gets beat up during the summertime of 93, and we see the urn stolen for the very first time. We didn't even talk about the urn. We got to mention the importance of the urn. He talks in the Mortician documentary about how as Percy Pringle, he used to have a cane with him that he came down to the ring with, and managers back then,
little baby cane,
not a baby cane, but maybe it was a nod to that, to his son sitting at home. Managers,
burning.
Back then they'd always have a signature item they would carry around. Paul E. Dangerously had the phone. Jim Cornette had the tennis racket, of course, that you could cheat with and hit your opponent with. Percy Pringle had a cane, and he said when he first came out as Paul Bearer the first few times, he kind of felt naked not having something in his hands, and it just clicked. What about an urn? I'm the funeral director. I'm Paul Bearer. Why not carry an urn around? And just that simple idea ends up having just this tremendous impact, because not only is it a weapon that he carries around, it gains this whole mythology surrounding it as he uses it to empower the Undertaker with his mysterious forces.
Exactly, and then it can become like in a movie, the MacGuffin, the thing that gets stolen or you're chasing or whatever. It's a part of the story. It becomes part of ways to tell stories. Which again, that's all wrestling is actually about. It's storytelling. Forget about the matches and the physicality. It's the story. Well, yeah, you can tell. Like you talk about the first time. So it's been almost 3 years Taker's been around, and the first time it gets stolen is the summer '93. So, and then that will. You could overdo it. It does get taken.
They did.
Sometimes it's like, we need a story for this angle would take, just somebody steal the urn or whatever. Like, so it does get overplayed a little bit, but it's always there to go to if you need it, So, but like you said, he doesn't come out with Taker at the beginning of that match, but then when he comes back out about halfway through, just a huge pop from the crowd. They love it. He attacks Harvey Whippleman, which I'm always a fan of. Anybody attacking Harvey Whippleman takes the urn back to a big pop from the crowd. So, that's just another thing. It's about moments. Wrestling is about storytelling and moments. Yes, you remember matches, but you remember moments more. I guarantee you have your favorite match, but you have more favorite moments. And Paul Bearer provided so many of those for The Undertaker.
So many, including throughout 1994. Even when The Undertaker is not around, we see him ascend into the heavens at Royal Rumble 94. But, going back and watching the TV from back then, which I've watched all the superstars that they put on Peacock from 94. Paul Bearer remains on TV throughout a lot of 94. He's cutting promos. He's doing segments. He's really keeping the Undertaker character alive on TV. He's promising that he's looking for the Undertaker. He's going to find him. And
it's all story.
It's all story. He helps sell the big Undertaker versus Underfaker match. Mm-hmm. And again, they just put so much trust and confidence in Paul Bearer. I guarantee you not a word of it was scripted beforehand. But Paul Bearer, the man, William Moody, was just so in touch with this character, Paul Bearer, that he could just do it without a script, with just, a little bit of guidance about what the story was supposed to be, go out there and just nail it in one take.
Oh, yeah. He doesn't need a lot of coaxing. He's really good at it. And so he becomes so theatrical in 94, 95. He's got this giant urn that he got. I mean, I don't know who's in there. Yokozuna and his whole family. But it's a lot of people.
The whole bloodline is in there.
The whole bloodline, yeah. And we got Mr. Bear's Opus, where he's just conducting things out and to the crowd. It's just amazing. He looks at his own reflection in it. He's looking at it, and you can see it. It's just, golly, it's amazing. And those are the things I have such a good memory laughing about when we went back and covered all that stuff on the show.
It's stuff I took for granted as a kid, and stuff I didn't realize so much. But then, going back and watching it back, you notice it and you see it and you pay attention to it. Again, it's so effortless from him. He's being used all the time. He's the host of one of those classic Coliseum videos, Paul Bearer's Hits from the Crypt. My notes, I put late 1944. I believe it came out in 1994. Actually.
That's fine.
And he gets his own action figure for the very first time. It's not one of these. I don't have his first action figure. I need to go back and get it, but it's one of the Bendums. Did you have any of the Bendums, Travis?
I don't think so. I
Okay.
had what's is it the LJ? Which one is the Jake the Snake that had the arm that
That's the
cocks out?
Hasbro.
The Hasbro. Yeah, I had the Hasbro. I had a couple of the Hasbros.
Well, the
The reason I
Bendums.
got Jake the Snake was for the actual snake.
Yes.
That toy was amazing. I think my brother still has the snake at his house.
Ooh,
I have to see
that's
next
worth
time
some
down
money. The actual snake
there.
that
Yeah,
comes with it. I don't have the snake. I just have the figure. I don't know where the snake is, but yeah, the Bendums were like little rubber ones.
that's
They
right.
were not that great. I've got his two Jax figures right here, representing the duality of Paul Bearer right here. But that was his very first one. He has the Bendum, and then the next pivotal moment of Paul Bearer's career really comes at SummerSlam 1996, where he turns heel on The Undertaker in the Boiler Room Brawl. Undertaker is about to win the match. He's asking for the urn and the classic Shakespeare pose from Paul Bearer, and Paul Bearer hesitates to give it to him and then smashes the urn on The Undertaker's head. And dude, you just never ever thought you would see this coming. You never thought Paul Bearer could separate from The Undertaker. These two guys are tied to each other, which is, I think, what made it such a great moment, because you could have never predicted it happening.
Right. A lot of turns you see coming, whether it's between friends or tag team partners, or Elizabeth and Macho Man or whatever. You see this kind of stuff. The seeds get planted along the way, and then you get the payoff. Like nowadays, Sami Zayn and Roman and all that kind of stuff, which we don't know how it plays out at Elimination Chamber. But anyway, you're anticipating that stuff.
Yeah.
Here, this was just straight out of left field, honestly. But it wasn't like a Russo swerve that's just like out of left field for no reason. And then we're going to make up a story. There's a story to be told here with Mankind. So that's what makes this such a big turn. Like you said, it's so unexpected. It's so just, you did not see it coming. But then it's not just a swerve for swerve's sake. They're going to build this Mankind character up, bring Vader into the fold, do all this stuff. You bring somebody else into the fold at the end of 96. It's just, it's going to be, you never thought you'd see them apart, which makes you want to see them back together again even more in the future, So I love that.
And I just think it's interesting timeline-wise, too. This happens in August of 1996, and this is a pretty famous heel turn as well in WCW in July of 1996 that you also would never see coming, where Hulk Hogan joined the NWO. And
Yeah.
I'm not at all saying WWF was trying to copy
Right.
WCW, but it is, I think it's just really funny how that worked out. Two just people you would never, ever in a million years thought could possibly turn heel. Two guys you just thought were baby faces forever in Hulk Hogan and Paul Bearer, and within 30 days of each other, they're both heels in their own separate companies.
It's crazy.
Paul tries to get over his new catchphrase, "I'm Paul Bearer and you're not." Pulling a little Chevy Chase there. It didn't really stick, but he did say that a bit during this time. And like you said, he aligns himself with Mankind, and he guides him to not the championship, but he guides him to a main event. Immediately, he's in that Mind Games match with Shawn Michaels, that awesome match, just shortly after this. And I do think, man, this version of Bearer separating from Undertaker really solidified him as a legend, because the typical roadmap for something like this, for a guy who's just so tied to one character, you might think, okay, Paul Bearer goes and manages another guy. He's going to lead him against Undertaker for maybe 3 months or something like that. They have the big blow off. Taker gives him a tombstone, throws him in the casket. We never hear from Paul Bearer again.
Yeah.
But that's not how it worked out. Paul Bearer is so good. You got to keep using him. He's got legs. He keeps the character alive, even apart from The Undertaker. He's bringing different guys against The Undertaker, like you said. One of them, we got to mention, Paul Bearer managed the Executioner, the legendary Terry Gordy, in a not so legendary role in 1996. Not a great addition to his stable, but you mentioned he brings Vader into the fold around Royal Rumble 97, and it definitely gives Vader a boost as far as the WWF goes.
Yeah, Vader was dead after that Shawn Michaels feud, so having Paul Bearer with him helps give him a little bit of a breath of fresh air and change of course. And again, putting him in there with another big old piece of meat like Taker is not hurt at all either. So and then uh, after that, the next big moment is going to be in April '97 when Taker is going to throw a fireball at Paul Bearer at In Your House Revenge of the Taker. So that's pretty big to throw a fireball at your former manager.
Yeah.
And then next time we're going to see Bear, his face is all bandaged up and he's started to let his blonde hair come back in, and he's clean shaven. He's talking more of his Percy Pringle voice and not quite as high and everything as he was, but letting some of that little falsetto and that trill go out of his voice. So getting to be, again, but it's the same character. He's not changing. He's just got shot with a fireball, so now there's a reason for these changes he's going to make. So I love it.
Yeah, the fire burned all the dye out of his hair and
Exactly.
burned his mustache off somehow. I'm not sure how all that worked, but it's funny once you've...
Not a dermatologist.
No, I don't know how it works. Once you've seen that Percy Pringle footage, you really see how much of it comes out in this 97 heel run of Paul Bearer. It's really cool to see. This is just, arguably his most famous angle and storyline here throughout the summer of 97. He kind of reunites with Undertaker as Undertaker is the champion and manages him for a few weeks because he's vowing to reveal a deep, dark secret about the Undertaker if he doesn't let him manage him. And finally, Undertaker can't take it anymore. He's about to beat up Paul Bearer on Monday Night Raw, and Paul Bearer screams out that Kane is alive! Kane is alive! And you're watching on TV like, what is he talking about? Who is Kane? What does all this mean? And that leads us to just this incredible summer of 1997. Paul Bearer just makes this angle work when it absolutely should not have, man.
He does, because, again, this Kane character is not talking. He's not, so...
He's not even seen for months.
Well, yeah, that's true. But, I mean, even when he does come, he's not going to talk. But, yeah, he's not seen, so... Taker has to have somebody to play against, and that's Paul Bearer. Paul Bearer is going to drive the soap opera forward. He's going to come out here and give all his threats and everything, give these long stories and backstories week after week after week. And it's very different than what we were ever used to back then. We still had soap operas, but it wasn't quite as soap. This is the most soap opera-ish we've had in modern wrestling at the time. And I remember you and I talking about that and how just when we covered this stuff early on in the podcast, just how we look at it now, it's like, golly, this is the most soap opera stuff. You got dead brothers, you got dead parents, you got people back from this, all stuff that you see on Days of Our Lives or General Hospital or whatever. Like, it really is. And so Bear was, he's driving the story and he's right there. This is 97. You've got Stone Cold, USA versus Canada. DX is coming around. Sean's doing his thing. It's crazy. Mr. McMahon's going to become a character in 97. It's just 97 is a wild year in the WWF. Bret Hart's stuff, shenanigans backstage in front. It's a wild thing. But in the middle of all that is Taker and his former manager and this brother Kane, or whoever it is. Kane is alive. So. And again, Taker can't come out here and have these long promos by himself. He's got to have somebody to play off of, and Bear is the perfect foil there.
And I think you absolutely have to put it up there with Stone Cold's rise to the top, with the DX and USA versus Canada stuff.
Yeah.
As something that was getting people to tune in week after week after week, as something that was helping to rebuild the WWF after it, was nearly going out of business, going up against WCW and the NWO, as something that was getting hot and working there. I really don't think it even gets enough credit.
I don't think either.
In that time, but it was awesome. It was so well done. Nobody in history could do it like Paul Bearer could have gotten that story over because it was so different than everything else going on TV. And that, of course, leads us to Bad Blood 1997. We see Kane's debut. We see Paul Bearer lead him out to the ring and have him destroy The Undertaker. And Paul Bearer is again managing the rise of another character's debut and an incredible rookie run for Kane. He's going to go on to have the WWF Championship. Paul Bearer is going to manage him to WWF Championship, even if it's only for 24 hours. He's going to manage him to there. And gosh, Paul Bearer and Kane were just gold together. Again, the Kane character doesn't speak. So you need a Paul Bearer there to be able to put him over and to get the angles and the storylines across. And he does that so much, especially leading up to WrestleMania 1998, WrestleMania 14. We said this back when we covered it on the podcast 25 years ago, this match was, but we said this, it does not get the credit it deserves for selling that pay-per-view.
Right.
Because I know for me, as someone watching it, I wanted to see The Undertaker versus Kane just as much as I wanted to see Stone Cold, Mike Tyson, and Shawn Michaels in the main event. And I think a lot of other people felt the same way.
Because this match was personal. The other matches are about championships or whatever it is, or dumpsters or whatever that. This match was personal between a brother and his long lost brother that he had burned in a fire or whatever. It's all soap opera and it's all coming to a culmination here at WrestleMania. And yeah, I don't think it gets the credit it deserves either. And I don't know if we've seen another long soap opera. We've seen a lot of this kind of stuff kind of come and go and fail, but I think honestly, the Bloodline storyline we got going on right now has been the closest to a long-term storytelling soap opera, has its ups and downs. And this is 25 years ago. In 25 years, I can't think of one other storyline that was as long and drawn out and soap opera-ish. I really can't. That's drawn people in like Taker and Kane have.
I mean, certainly not one that has a payoff that actually works.
It's going to work. Exactly.
That we try for surprises, we try for mysteries and things like that. And so often in wrestling, you've got a great build up, you're hooked into it, and then the surprise, the payoff happens, and then it's just, it's over. Then the bell rang,
right.
Whatever. And not with Kane, not with Paul Bearer. It's because Paul Bearer helps put it over.
Yeah.
Well, the mythology between Paul Bearer and Kane and The Undertaker continues to grow. We gotta credit Vince Russo. We've long been defenders of Vince Russo. We call him out when he deserves to be called out, but we try to give him credit where he deserves. He doesn't always get that respect that he deserves in the business.
I understand why, but he does need respect for the things he did. Yeah,
and I'm sure he's a pivotal part of all this stuff. There's a segment on Raw where I remember watching this live as it happened. Jerry the King Lawler is getting ready to interview Paul Bearer backstage. They tease it, and then they're supposed to go to commercial, and the camera gets set down, but it keeps rolling. And we see Jerry Lawler and Paul Bearer sit down in the locker room saying, all right, we got about 3 minutes here before we come back. They're just casually talking. Paul Bearer is looking for his drink or whatever. And you're sitting there watching it at home like, what's...
This real?
This isn't supposed to be happening. I'm seeing something I'm not supposed to be seeing. Like when it first starts, of course, you realize as it goes on, this is storyline. This is supposed to be happening. But at first, you're hooked in. Like, oh my gosh, the camera didn't stop rolling. I'm seeing them talk out of character. What's happening?
Yep.
And dirty old man Jerry Lawler is asking Paul Bearer, is it true? Are you really Kane's father? Is that really true? And Paul's like blushing. He doesn't want to talk about it, but he tells Jerry, all right, you swear not to tell anybody. I was 19 years old. I came home from the wrestling matches back to the funeral home, and there was Undertaker's mom. She was just sitting there in a teddy, just begging for me. And he's like, I'd never been with a woman before. But I wasn't as big as I am right now, Jerry. I was studly back then. And Jerry Lawler's laughing, and he talks about slipping her the salami and
it's a lot, yeah.
Her it's so much
geography of where her
feet
are.
Yeah. She was from New York to Los Angeles.
Yeah.
It's
yikes.
And then they come back from commercial, and Jerry Lawler's got his head down. He's like apologizing for people having to see that. It's so well done, so different, but it it establishes something new, that Paul Bearer is Kane's father.
Yep, it's crazy, man. So adding another piece into this this soap opera. I almost said soup opera. So adding another ingredient to the soup of the soap opera.
You were thinking about the salami right there.
Apparently,
you had food on your mind.
Apparently. So after all this drama, we get more. Again, they're not called the Bros of Destruction yet, but that's what they'll become. But we get more drama for them all through '98. Are they together? Are they not together? They're working against Austin. They're working for Vince. Are they not? Are they in cahoots?
Cahoots. That was the word.
That's going to lead us. Paul Bear's going to be reunited with Taker at Survivor Series '98, which is then going to roll into the Ministry of Darkness. And Paul's a big part of this storyline again, which, again, puts Taker and Paul at the center of the main attraction there. Again, we talk, he's always there. He's always there. Always there in the main event scene.
You know, Austin versus Rock gets all the credit. It gets, you know, as it should get a lot of credit.
Yeah.
But people think of that as like the signature feud and storyline of the Attitude Era. Dude, you go back and watch the TV, you go back and look at the majority of the pay-per-views, maybe it didn't happen at WrestleMania, but Austin versus Undertaker, especially the Ministry of Darkness,
98, 99.
That is the feud that defines
Yes.
1998 and 1999. That is the feud that carries the majority of the shows. Not Austin versus Rock, not Austin versus DX, not Austin versus anybody else. Not me. Austin versus McMahon, yes, but Austin versus Undertaker and the Ministry of Darkness and Paul Bearer, that's all intertwined in all of that. So you got to put that over. And Paul Bearer is a huge part of that. Huge part of that Ministry of Darkness storyline. And because of that, he actually has his first and only match in WWE as part of this storyline. It takes place on an episode of Raw, May 10th, 1999. Paul Bearer versus The Big Show.
I remember this.
It's not much of a match. It is one bump from Paul Bearer off a big boot, and it actually is technically a no contest. Big Show doesn't even bother to pin Paul Bearer. He's undefeated. He's winless, but he's also undefeated.
That's fine.
But this is that great episode of Raw. Like, Shawn Michaels is the commissioner at this time, and he's just like, he books all these ridiculous matches off his clipboard and stuff. Very fun episode of Raw.
Oh, yeah. That's why I remember this night like it was yesterday. It's just crazy, this stuff. Again, it's about the moments. Like, I don't remember like the actual in-ring matches it took, but I remember the moments, like you said, Shawn. I remember this big boot and everything, just the storytelling that took place. But, well, that was his first match. His first ever video game appearance is going to be WWF Attitude on July 31st, 1999. He did, that was a game, man.
Did you play that one?
I mean, yeah, oh yeah.
It sucked.
I played that one. It was not great. Yeah.
It was one of those, it was like Warzone where you had to pause it every time you wanted to do a move and look up the move list.
Check out the move set.
Yeah. I had to do triangle, square, circle, R1, R2 to do a wrist.
Yeah. Yeah, it was terrible.
At the same time.
Yeah, it was terrible. But kudos for Paul Bearer being in it. He's also going to be in SmackDown 1, 2, and No Mercy. And again, No Mercy doesn't get any better than that, but
untouchable.
Yeah, exactly. So,
of course, he's in many of the THQ and whatever they are now, whatever they have.
2K,
he's in a lot of the modern
sports.
games. Yeah. Well, he's going to take a break kind of in 1999, around the same time Undertaker takes a break in 99 when he goes off before becoming the American Badass. And he's actually going to come back, not with the Undertaker, but with his son Kane in February of 2000. And I had forgotten that he comes back on this night until I was doing the research for this. But I know you remember this, Travis. It's main evented this 10-man tag match with Triple H and the Radicals against Rock, Cactus Jack, Rikishi, and Too Cool, which is like one of the best Raw main events of all time.
Oh, yeah.
One of the best Raw crowds of all time. Yeah. And Kane comes out, makes a big return with Paul Bearer to save the day, and wrecks Triple H and the Radicals and DX, and the crowd is just on fire for this, man.
Oh, yeah.
If you haven't watched it in a while, look it up on YouTube and check it out. It is so good.
Yeah, what a great night, and I've forgotten that that's the night Kane and Bearer came back too. So yeah, what an epic night, man! So good.
It was awesome.
So WrestleMania 2000, he was there. Kane and Rikishi defeat X-Pac and Road Dogg, and we see Kane give Pete Rose a choke slam, and then Paul Bearer gives him a little crotch chop there.
He's having a blast.
Yeah, he loves it.
He's having so much fun.
He's giving it 100%. But then he's gone off TV after that, and he did work behind the scenes for a little while, but in 2002, I think he's finally gone from his contract or whatever. I don't think there's any bad terms.
Right.
They just didn't renew it, and he just leaves. So
Yeah, and
and at that point, Taker was American BA, and Kane was doing his different mask stuff and was about to be unmasked. So he wasn't really needed, honestly.
he wasn't really needed. I believe this is sort of the time that his weight is becoming a little bit out of control,
Oh,
a
yeah.
little bit unmanageable. He also his wife Diana, I believe, was starting to get sick. She suffers from breast cancer and passed away. So there's a lot of things going on with Bear where he's going to be at home more. But again, he loves the wrestling business. He stays involved in it. He even makes a couple of appearances in TNA, Total Nonstop Action. He debuts with them on their weekly pay-per-view number 24, so pretty early on in the days of TNA in 2002, and he tries to align with Sports Entertainment Extreme, SEX, with Vince Russo. He's part of the Bizarre segment with Tony Schiavone in TNA, so
Oh, yeah.
he's involved in some stuff there, but nothing super memorable or iconic. And that's just going to be a little placeholder until I'd say one of the top moments of his entire career, which is something we were there for, man. WrestleMania 20. What do you remember about being there in person for that?
I remember, I think you realized what was happening before I did, because it was like, ooh, and we heard his voice through MSG, and you turned to me and you're like, oh, and I was like, it took me a second. I was like, what? You're like, it's Paul Bearer, and like we were just like, I mean, little schoolgirls. We're jumping because we know we're gonna get Taker as a dead man comeback. That's expected. This was not expected. I don't remember it being on the rumor mill, on the internet, on the dirt sheets, or anything. But if you're gonna have Taker come back, why not have Paul Bearer? How's it gonna work in 2004? Excuse me, when it's a little bit more reality based. How's this version of the dead man gonna work? Well, turns out it works great. But yeah, I just remember you like realizing the whoo first, and I was like, what? And you're like, it's Bear, and like, we were just jumping. It was so exciting to hear that and realize it.
It really was unexpected. Of course, in hindsight, of course you bring the dead man back.
Yeah.
Why not bring back Paul Bearer? But that just never crossed my mind.
No.
We knew the dead man was coming back. It never crossed my mind to bring Paul Bearer back, and yet it's so perfect. It really sold it. It really put over the return of the dead man and made it feel even more important that you have Paul Bearer back. He had been asked to return and initially said no. But actually, because he was so ashamed of how out of shape he had gotten, he was never quite as studly, as he made you to believe. But he actually got his weight. I think he says in the Mortician he was at 525 pounds, which is extremely unhealthy, morbidly obese. And he said, I can't be on TV like this. They show some emails that he has back and forth with JR where he says, I can't even talk to you, Jim. I'd be too emotional. I can't even consider coming back at this point. And, Vince McMahon stepped in and said, look, I don't care about you being on TV, but you need to get healthy, and we're going to pay for gastric bypass surgery. And Paul Bearer talks about, it saved his life. And look, Vince McMahon is a complicated man. He's got plenty of issues that we could sit here and have plenty of podcasts talking about all the terrible things about him. But he's also a guy who, would do that for someone that he loved and cared about, just completely selflessly, and completely say, that they show his contract in that Mortician documentary, and he got a signing bonus of $35,000 that was supposed to be for this surgery to save his life.
Crazy.
And that's just, that's incredible.
Oh yeah, it is. And, sadly it is going to take care of his life, but he's still not in ring shape, and he can't make TVs and everything. So fortunately his career in WWF is going to basically go by the wayside during the infamous Concrete Crip match at the Great American Bash 2004. So he's going to get buried alive underneath the concrete. And the less we talk about that, the better.
I actually recently listened to our episode covering that, just kind of randomly threw that one on while I was walking the dog or something like that, and boy, it is insane. And kudos to Paul Bearer selling it and trying to get it over. He did his best with it. It's going to be the first of many times that we see him die on screen,
Right.
get killed off on screen. He's going to become sort of the Kenny from South Park of
Exactly.
WWE television here for a little while. But yeah, short-lived run. He goes off TV. Undertaker buries him in concrete. But he's actually going to stay involved in WWE. I didn't know this, man, but I found this in my research. Apparently, whenever WWE would come to Mobile, Alabama, or around there, he would come to the house shows, the TV tape things. They would bring him out. He would, do something for the live crowd and stuff like that.
Cool.
Introduce the show, host the shows, things like that. And apparently, in January of 2007, he appeared at a SmackDown ECW co-branded taping and managed the Brothers of Destruction
That's awesome.
in a dark match. And I actually could not find any of the results that show what match it was, but Paul Bearer, William Moody, he talks about it on his blog, which I'll post a link to it on our social media. It still exists on the internet. He had a blog that he posted on regularly, like in the mid 2000s all the way up until his death.
That's awesome.
And he was like really ahead of the time. He would post, his thoughts about wrestling, his thoughts about different things he was involved in. It's a really cool time capsule to see that there on the internet. And he has a picture of him, really grainy picture of him with Undertaker and Kane. So it definitely happened, but it's not on the history of WWE or any of these other sites. But just kind of guessing based around the timeline and other matches that were happening, I imagine Undertaker and Kane probably defeated Mr. Kennedy and MVP because that was a common house show match around that time. But just pretty cool that happened for the live crowd. Paul Bearer managing the Brothers of Destruction. Pretty special,
That's
pretty
awesome.
unique.
If you were there, I'll say it right now, earlier on in the show, if you were there that night, we want to hear from you. Mobile, Alabama, January 23rd, 07. We want to hear about it for sure. Well, something that was a really high, but something that's a low is that after that, his wife's going to pass away from breast cancer in 2009. She's only 47 years old. That's pretty young, man. That's only 10 years from now for us. It's crazy to think about.
That's horrible.
Yeah. But he's still going to stay in the wrestling business and do some indie stuff. Actually, these guys can't ever hang it up.
He
even
actually,
as a mortician.
Yeah, no, like he actually ran his own indie kind of in Alabama, but this one was for NWA Championship Wrestling from Hollywood.
Ooh, so he's going to manage Brian Cage and a young LA Knight. Well, I guess he wouldn't have been LA Knight at the time, but yeah. There's a Undertaker connection for you. So
how about that?
Pretty crazy.
Full circle coming in 2023. LA Knight works with the Undertaker, and he ended up being one of the last guys ever managed by Paul Bearer.
It's crazy, man.
He was known as Sean Ricker during this time in his career, and of course he'd be Eli Drake and TNA and all that sort of stuff, and actually
Max Dupree.
Max Dupree, briefly. We'll call him LA Knight. He faced Brian Cage, and they actually had a casket match, tying into last month's episode, the history of the casket match. They had a casket match in 2012, and after Bear passed away, LA Knight won a Percy Pringle tribute tournament and won the Championship Wrestling from Hollywood Championship in May of 2013, dedicated to Percy Pringle. He had an interview on the Chris Van Vliet podcast recently.
2 weeks ago.
Yeah, he talked about how actually he was very close with Bear, and Bear actually left him some memorabilia and things when he passed away. And man, I really thought that was so cool.
Yeah, I can't remember if he reaches back and grabs a picture or if Chris just like flashes the picture on him. But we see a picture of him and Paul Bearer together, like on the floor next to a ring. It's really neat. But yeah, he had great things to say about him, and just thought it was really cool, man. Like what a connection you didn't think of, like from Taker like to LA Knight. It's just weird, which probably meant a lot to him in real life to be in that segment with Bray and Taker. Now that we know this kind of stuff,
Yeah, you can tell because like he's kind of bless you.
Sorry, I meant to mute it. I didn't make it.
LA Knight, he's kind of halfway in character for this interview with Chris Van Vliet, but he kind of he even says like, I'm gonna drop this for a minute and say like how much this did mean to me and how close we really were. So it was cool, and you can tell it still holds a very special place in his heart.
And then, well, before we're talking about him post-mortem, but before he does pass away, Paul Bearer, he's going to come back in WWE in September of 2010 on the 24th. This is on SmackDown for that final angle between Taker and Kane. Of course, this is where Kane has got the World Championship and is going to defeat his brother 3 pay-per-views in a row, which is unheard of at the time, But he's going to come out, and Matt Striker has a rare good line. He calls him the father of destruction. So we could crap on Matt Striker's commentary for most of our lives, but he has a great call there.
I dug that. I don't think he'd ever been called that before, but I dug that. He's going to turn on Undertaker at the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view. And, I remember talking about it back then. It's a little sad to see he is struggling to get into the ring, and it takes such a long time to get this angle going where he pulls the lid off the urn, shines the light in the Undertaker's eyes. You can tell it means so much to Paul Bearer to be in there, and he's doing his best, but he's just facing those physical limitations. He can't be the same guy that he once was. And the thing that really disappointed me about this run, and we're going to talk about his final run in 2012. We just didn't get enough promos from Bear.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where he shines, is the promos. And I wish they would have given us a little bit more of that. But he's really just kind of eye candy.
Nostalgia.
Don't normally say that about Paul Bear, about calling him eye candy. But
he's an eye candy. He's one of those giant jawbreakers from Cracker Barrel that you can't put in your mouth. He's one of those.
He's the 6 foot long Twix bar,
Yeah.
I always wanted it to be a little bit more. It was always great to see him. And I'm sure it meant a lot for him after all he'd gone through to just be able to be out on TV and to hang out with the boys and to be used like that. But I just wish we could have gotten a little bit more of it.
No doubt.
He helps Kane bury The Undertaker alive at the Bragging Rights pay-per-view. I really thought there was going to be something more of this Kane run, man. I know we talked about this when we covered these matches. I thought it was going to be a start of a really big push for Kane, but just didn't quite end up that way as we get into this bizarre angle with Edge here.
Well, once you beat your brother 3 times in a row, you can only go downhill from there, and which we're going to go downhill real fast. So can we just read what you got from Wikipedia here?
Well, Kane buries The Undertaker alive. He moves on to this feud with Edge, and I do remember watching this on TV at the time and just having the thought of WTF, like what is happening on TV. And
this made me hate Kane.
It made me hate Edge.
And Edge,
honestly, I didn't know how better to sum it up than to just copy and paste from Wikipedia. So just go for it, Travis, and give us this.
Kane enters the feud with Edge after he was named a new challenger to Kane's World Heavyweight Championship at Survivor Series. On the November 12th episode of SmackDown, Kane cost Edge's match against the Nexus member David Otunga. After the match, Edge kidnaps Paul Bearer by strapping him to a wheelchair. Later that night, Edge uses Bearer to cost Kane his match against The Big Show. The following week, Edge torments Bearer throughout the night by throwing a dodgeball at him and force-feeding him and throwing pizza all over him.
You can dodge a wrench. You can dodge a ball.
Exactly. Dodge, duck, dip, dive, and dodge, baby. Then Edge is going to use Bear to call for Kane in the parking lot, but Kane wasn't able to get to Bear in time because Edge is going to attack him and then drive off with him. At Survivor Series, Edge brings an empty wheelchair, causing Kane to go mad and try to interrogate him on where Bear is held captive. Even though the match ends in the draw, Kane was unable to find Bear as Edge has wheeled his enemy into a barricade. On November 26th episode of SmackDown, Kane demands that Edge let Bear go, but Edge refused. Kane attempts to track down Bear, but he was unable to find him. Kane offers a second title shot to Edge, which he accepts, but continues to keep Paul Bear with him. At the end of the night, Edge lures Kane to the parking lot where Edge drove over a dummy version of Paul Bear with the actual Paul Bear in the back seat of the car. On December 3rd episode of SmackDown, Edge continues his mind games with Kane by pushing a dummy version of Paul Bear down some stairs. Then, after Edge defeats Kane in the non-title match, he brought out a Paul Bear look-alike. Kane then goes to search for Bear again, but Edge drives away in a truck with Paul Bearer tied up in the back. The following week, Kane begged Edge to return Paul Bearer, but Edge once again refused. Kane refused to participate in the main event that night and once again forced him to search for Bear. After seeing what he thought was a dummy version of Paul Bearer on top of 2 ladders, Kane pushes him over because he's been tricked by this ruse in the past here. Afterward, Kane, in turn, realizes he pushes the actual Paul Bearer off the ladders onto the concrete floor, thus injuring him and writing him out of storyline.
Oh my gosh!
Wow.
They killed Paul Bearer again. Dude, this is so ridiculous. I hated it. Edge is a babyface during this, just torturing the poor, sweet, innocent Paul Bearer.
Yeah, it's
oh my goodness,
it's rough, man.
It was brutal
rough
to
for
watch
us
on
at
TV.
home. Yeah,
but I talked about Paul Bearer's blog earlier, and I was reading about it during this time. He actually says on his blog that this was some of the favorite stuff he ever did, because during all this time where he's kidnapped by Edge, he's got duct tape over his mouth, and he doesn't get to talk. He doesn't get to say anything. He said he felt like it really challenged him as a performer because he had to do it all with his eyes and with his body, with his facial expressions.
like Tom Hardy.
And it made it so much harder for him to do. And Paul Bearer is the Tom Hardy of professional wrestling, as we've always said. But you know what? We might have hated it, but I'm glad that Paul Bearer enjoyed it and found some purpose and found some fun in it.
Yeah, if he loved it, that's all that matters.
That's what matters, dude. You and I, in high school, we had drama class. We took that, throughout high school, and we loved performing and acting. And there's something that our drama teacher, Miss Lee, always told us. And Monique, our fellow podcaster, she was in our drama classes quite a bit from the Wrestling Winos podcast. But she always said and taught us to perform to the back of the theater. Meaning what? What did that mean?
Cheap seats. People in the very back. You want whatever you're doing on stage, you want the people in the back to be able to see it. So that's why you sell big. You don't make subtle moves. You make big sales, big facial features, big smiles, your eyes wide open. You sell it to the cheapest seat as far away as you can. And guess who did that better than almost anybody?
Is there any human being in the world of professional wrestling that did that better than Paul Bearer?
No, I don't think so.
No.
I don't think so. I honestly don't.
Oh, really? And even when he's getting kidnapped and can't say anything, he was trying to do that. He's the king of that.
Yeah.
He is someone that young performers, wrestling or managing, whatever you're doing, they should honestly study Paul Bearer and how he was able to do that.
Yep, absolutely. He's fantastic.
Well, he makes his final WWE appearance in April of 2012 on an episode of Monday Night Raw with his son Kane again in an angle against Randy Orton. It's hard to believe. I bet you could ask a lot of people. They would probably forget that Randy Orton and Kane had a WrestleMania match in 2012.
I'll never forget
on most days.
I was so disappointed.
And it kept going even after WrestleMania. But Kane actually attacked Randy's father, Cowboy Bob Orton, before this. And so Randy's going to try to get revenge against Kane by attacking his father, Paul Bearer, and locks him in a meat freezer yet again. Which, it's if Paul had a nickel for every time he'd been locked in a meat freezer, he'd have 2 nickels, but
he'd have a dime. Yeah.
It's weird that it happened twice.
It's like a Dumb and Dumber when he's like, "Oh, fell on tarmac again."
Exactly
my favorite
right.
part of the whole movie because he says again.
Big gulps, huh?
All right.
See you later. Well,
anyway, we can keep going.
Kane saves Paul Bearer, but it's only to toss him back into the meat freezer and say, "I'm just here to save you from me," which doesn't really make any sense. And it's the last time we see Paul on WWE television. Again, I'm sure he was just excited to get the call and to, get out of the house and to be used again. And
Sure, that check was nice too.
Yeah, I'm sure it was. And at least we got one last scream from Paul Bearer as the door to the meat freezer is closed and he's locked away. And that's where the Paul Bearer character rots away inside a meat freezer somewhere. he was rumored, actually, and I believe he was asked to reunite with the Brothers of Destruction at Raw 1000 in
Okay, that would have
2012.
been into 2012-ish, yeah.
Where they chokeslam Kurt Hawkins and I think it's Jinder Mahal, maybe Tyler
so.
Rex, maybe
T-Rex.
couple of guys. I know Kurt Hawkins was one of them, but apparently he had scheduling conflicts. He couldn't quite make it out there. And then we're tragically going to lose the man, the legend, Bill Moody, Paul Bearer, at the age of 58 due to a heart attack on March 5th, 2015. Way too young.
13.
Yeah, 2013, March 5th, 2013. And I remember it happening. I remember being very sad to read about the news. And immediately, though, his legacy is going to live on after his passing.
Well, I was going to say, at Raw 1000, something big does happen, and that CM Punk turns heel against The Rock.
Oh,
you think
there
he's coming
go.
out?
There's
you
the
think
connection.
he's coming out to save or help Rock, and he winds up Rock's doing people's elbow, I think it is, and Punk runs in and clotheslines him, and that's when Punk turns heel, which then he's going to go on to lose to The Rock twice in a row, once to people's elbow. Anyway, don't get me started on that, how that run ended. But anyway, he's going to segue that. I said to say that's where the seed was planted of Punk being heel, and then he's going to. It was hard for me to take him as a heel. We loved him at the time. I love Rock, but we wanted to see Punk in Mania. Punk should have been the main event of Mania that year. But if you're not main event, what's the next match you want?
Undertaker.
The Undertaker match,
The
right?
streak.
And what better way to get actual heel heat on CM Punk, who everybody loved, than to turn Paul Bearer's actual death into an angle? I mean, immediately. Like the next week on Raw, dude, he's there. And we see a tribute to Bearer that Punk's going to interrupt. The next few weeks, we see Heyman come out dressed as Paul Bearer, which is beautiful. It was so well done. Paul Bearer knew how to sell the cheap seats when he was Paul Heyman knew how to when he was being Bear. And then Punk's going to steal the urn, and the infamous thing where he dumps the ashes all over Undertaker and rubs them on himself. So using, again, for someone outside the business, it's kind of weird for us to see this kind of stuff. But everyone in the business always says oh, Eddie would have loved it when you use him. Dusty would love it when you use him. Paul Bearer would have loved it. And his kids said that, I think, in the Hall of Fame, if I'm not mistaken. They say he loved this stuff. He loved it. He would have loved them using him. It's kind of uncomfortable to watch so soon, but it helped sell this match for sure to me.
Kane says in the Mortician documentary, he said, some people might say, oh, this is tacky, this is gross that you're using him in this way right after he passed away. And he says, what better way to honor
exactly
this man than by having him be the focal point
exactly
of a WrestleMania match in front of 70,000 people. I mean, that speaks to his legacy. Yeah.
There was no story going in. It was just Punk's getting Taker because it's the next best thing.
What would it have been
story.
if Paul Bearer hadn't passed away? Yeah.
He gifted them in his death. He gifted them the story to build this match around. He did. And like you said, what better way to honor him than to make him a focal point of a match? And one of my favorite WrestleMania matches. It's fantastic. And so good.
Spoiler alert, next month on the show, we're going to look back at that. We're going to look back 10 years later at CM Punk versus The Undertaker. But yeah, you're right, man. It there was nobody better but Punk and Heyman to really embrace that and to go along with that. And they really did. Undertaker did. He talked about it was a little uncomfortable for him at first, but he knew how much it would honor Paul Bearer by having him be a part of that. Taker even has some gear. He's got a Paul Bearer tribute on his pants at WrestleMania 29, has a symbol for him on his gear. He gets the urn back in victory, pays tribute to him at that moment. And it's hard to say when someone passed away, oh yeah, they would have loved this, but Paul Bearer of all people would have loved this and embraced this. And I want to mention too, on the Mortician documentary, Mick Foley says on there, he heard the news about Bearer dying, and he was driving to Indianapolis before an event. He was supposed to be going to a signing or something like that. And he says he was in his car and he pulled over and he put in the GPS. He put in Mobile, Alabama, to be able to go to the funeral. And it was like 750 miles from where he is. And he says, I didn't think twice. I just turned the car around and I started driving to Mobile, Alabama, because I knew there's 3 people from WWE that need to be at this funeral. One is The Undertaker, one is Kane, and one is me.
Yep.
And so he said it wasn't even a question of how it was. I just turned the car around and started driving back in that direction. And I thought
That's
that was
awesome.
That was really cool, really special for him to say that. So of course he does pass away. He has a funeral and then gets honored in just the best way possible in the world of wrestling. He gets inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2014, the very next year, by his son Kane, who gives the speech to induct him, and then gets accepted by his 2 sons in real life, Michael and Daniel Moody, who pay tribute to him. Sadly, Michael actually passed away just shortly after this, not very long after this. But I'm glad they got to have that moment and experience that while they were both still there. I'm sure it meant a lot to them. And then, what about this moment where The Undertaker makes a rare Hall of Fame appearance?
Yeah, he comes out in character to pay tribute to Paul Bearer, which, again, unheard of. Like, literally, it never happened before. So that, again, just goes to show you the importance of this man to that character, to the wrestling business, to WWF, to the fans. To have Taker be willing to. He's not Mark Calloway coming out, but he's Undertaker coming out of the Hall of Fame and doing that's awesome, man.
So I remember in 2014 when this happened, when he went in the Hall of Fame, I kind of was like, okay. Like, I loved Paul Bearer growing up. I loved him as a kid. But I always thought of him kind of as like one-dimensional. Like, he's just the guy that's with The Undertaker. And he's great at it. And he's funny. And, I remember imitating him as a kid and enjoying it.
Yeah.
And I was like, is he a Hall of Fame? Is he a Hall of Famer? Does he really deserve that? I can't think of anything that I changed my opinion on more throughout this podcast than recognizing how important Paul Bearer was.
I agree.
And how pivotal he was, and how much he deserved to be in the Hall of Fame, because he was not just the side piece to The Undertaker.
Mm-mm.
He was so much more than that. And I'm so glad that they did honor him, and especially, just right away. They said he's thrown in the Hall of Fame immediately. He deserved it.
Yeah, I can't think of anything that we've learned a lot of stuff during this podcast. But like you said, I think the biggest thing is just we know how great Taker was. We know how great the storylines are with Kane and this and that and the other. But I just think, seeing how vital this guy was to making it all click. I took him for granted, dude. I did. And you watched way more than I did as a kid. But just sound like you took it for granted too. I think a lot of us did. And then going back through it like we have, it's just, golly, Taker wouldn't have lasted without Paul Bearer. He really wouldn't have. I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
I don't think it would have been long. There's certain things you could do, but I don't know. But he's going to get, like you said, the Mortician Special, which you got some of this information from. It's going to come out in November 2020. And then we see his urn as part of those WWE Lost Treasures show, which is pretty cool. So those are coming back on after Elimination Chamber, which would be before this podcast drops. So that and the Rivals thing, which will be good stuff. But then he actually does make one final appearance in the WWF, and something that I thought was just amazing. I know some people don't. I don't care. This was incredible for us to see. Why don't you tell us where he makes his final appearance at?
It's The Undertaker's final farewell at Survivor Series 2020. He appears as a hologram, which imagine saying that sentence to someone in 1991 when he debuted, that he would one day appear as a hologram. You could have never dreamed something up like that. But The Undertaker ends that final farewell by kneeling down, making that Shakespeare pose, and a hologram of Paul Bearer appears. You hear the "oh yes" come out, over the audio, and it just shows you his importance to the man, Mark Calloway.
Bingo.
Because Mark Calloway could have vetoed that. He could have said, this moment's about me. You show Paul Bearer in the video package beforehand, but this is my moment. This is my 30 years in the business. I want the spotlight to be on me. He said, no, we need to have it be me and Paul Bearer at the very end. That needs to be the final image of the Undertaker is him and Paul Bearer, and it just shows what a vital role he had in his career and in his life. That gets to be part of the Undertaker's final farewell, is him paying homage to Paul Bearer.
Yeah, it's crazy. I can't. There's nothing else to say. It's perfect. That was a perfect way to end his career.
He just, just to wrap things up, man, he just seemed like a genuinely hilarious and sweet human being to be around. From clips in that Mortician documentary, just
There's always ribbing people backstage.
So many ribs backstage. Just so fun to be around off camera. There's that clip of him where they're embalming Stone Cold Steve Austin alive, and they cut his shirt open, and then he goes to cut his pants open, and Stone Cold's like, "What are you doing?" He just made people laugh in these great moments. They talk about what a huge George Jones fan he was.
Digging up bones.
That he would carry around 8x10s of George Jones in his suitcase just in case they ever ran into him, which he did apparently, and got to go backstage and see a George Jones concert, which is great.
Always be prepared.
Taker talked about it at the One Dead Man show that I attended. He said a great story about driving with Bearer, and Bearer would be the guy. He would be the guy that would always put cucumbers in Taker's water or his tea or whatever, which we know Taker has a phobia of. And Taker got him back one time. They were driving, and Paul told Taker, I got to take a leak. I got to go to the restroom. Let's hit the next exit. And Taker's like, I got you. And then he missed that exit, and Paul's like, hey, you missed the exit back there. And Taker's like, I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention. I'll get the next one. And then he missed the next one too, and just kept going until Paul had to pee his pants. So Taker got one back on Paul, but Paul got quite a few ribs on him, man.
Oh boy, I love it.
Let me ask you a couple questions here to wrap this up, Travis. If there was a moment, we Paul Bearer's been gone for 10 years now. Taker's career lasted many years after that. Is there a moment in the past 10 years where you wish Paul Bearer could have been involved in something that The Undertaker or Kane was a part of over the past 10 years?
It would have been nice to have seen him at the match with AJ Styles.
Ooh, okay.
That would have been neat to have had him be able to have been a part of that somehow. Honestly, it may have changed the dynamic, though. It may not have. I don't know. I don't know if it really works with the guy riding in on the bike, but I mean, I think it would have been cool to have seen some kind of cameo from him there. Something just because we knew it was Taker's final match,
his last match. Yeah.
To see Paul be in that would have been really cool. Plus, it's in a graveyard-ish area. Like it would have been cool, man.
You could have had just a little shot of him after the match where he's just like, putting a little dirt on the grave.
Yeah, exactly.
Straightening the tombstone or something like that. Just like, a little 5-second cameo. That would have been cool.
Yeah, he just dusts off the tombstone or something, and the camera pans back and it's just him. He's like, kind of looks at it. Oh, yeah, like that.
A little something like that would have been cool.
That's all it would have needed.
Yeah. I didn't think about that, but I like that. I think something involving Bray Wyatt and him, like maybe he gives a little advice to Bray Wyatt in trying to beat The Undertaker or something like that. Could have been cool for their WrestleMania 31 match. But I think, gosh, it's a shame he couldn't have been the manager for the Brothers of Destruction at Survivor Series 2015, the 25th anniversary of Undertaker.
Yeah.
If he could have been there to just be ringside for that match, what a special match and moment. It just would have been awesome to have him be a part of that.
That would have been cool.
And then, I mean, where do you rank Paul Bearer's legacy as a manager, dude? Do you put him on the Mount Rushmore of pro wrestling managers? Who is on your Mount Rushmore of pro wrestling managers?
I mean, Bobby Heenan and Paul Heyman are honestly
they have to
be on there.
Yep,
I think it's because of what we do. I have to put Paul Bearer up there. He didn't have a great array of talent he managed for a long time, but the people he managed and really managed were important.
The impact.
Vader and Mankind. Yeah, but Executioner, whatever. But those are all part of the story of Taker and of Kane. So, I mean, I think he'd have to be up there, and just how vital he was. He was part of the package with Taker. He was. There's never been anybody else as a manager who was just as vital to getting that character over as he was. Now, Paul Heyman helps get Brock Lesnar over, but Brock Lesnar's already freaking over when he walks out as a character. And he's on a gimmick. But as a gimmick, no manager has ever been so vital to getting that gimmick over as Bearer is to Taker. So I say you got to have those Heyman, Cornette, and Paul Bearer. I'd say
that's exactly what I was going to say.
Those are the four.
I think that's the Mount Rushmore of managers, and I think you're fooling yourself if you don't put Bearer. We're biased, but I think he belongs right up there with those guys as well, 100%. And I think that's
be those four.
The greatest compliment you can give to his legacy right there that you put in that.
Yeah, with those three guys.
Yeah, exactly. And it's awesome that he touched so many guys as Percy Pringle as well, so many other Hall of Famers and legends. And I really, truly hope that his story and his memory gets told. It gets remembered for many, many years after this. And if we can be a small part of just continuing to honor that and to spread that memory and spread that legacy, it's an honor to be a part of that. So
absolutely,
I'm glad we've discovered it and found a love for it and appreciated him throughout the years. So let us know. Tell us what your favorite Paul Bearer, Percy Pringle, William Moody memories are. Tell us your favorite moments of him on WWE television. I asked for some moments on our Twitter feed at Talking Taker before we recorded this, and I'm going to pull them up here.
Ooh, my AirPods are about to die.
All right. We'll wrap it up here
my
fairly quickly. Drew Carfrey said WrestleMania 20, that "oh yes" from Paul Bearer, and he's talking to the camera, "You're no son of mine," talking to Kane. He's just selling it so well. Chris Sulima said his return in 2004 and 2010 were incredible. Old Princeton John, friend of the podcast, said, "I loved how he could help elevate a story. Without Paul, the Undertaker-Kane story would not have been the best storyline in history."
Amen.
And his facial expressions were the absolute best.
Amen.
And, of course, our friend Randy Turco, he mentioned a couple of moments. And
no, Randy.
1998, Kane and Stone Cold threw Paul Bearer down a manhole on Raw in 1998.
Head
You remember
first,
that?
wasn't it?
I think it was. Which, he said, number one, how was that physically possible? And it just shows you how much of dedication he had to his craft, that he was willing to do that, because that was not on a Hollywood backlot. I mean, that was legit. And then he also mentions this commercial leading up into WrestleMania 11 with Paul Bearer, Mr. Fuji, and Nicholas Turturro of NYPD Blue fame, where I don't even know how to describe it, but it ends up with Mr. Fuji in a dress and a wig, looking like Marilyn Monroe, and it's hilarious. It's great. Check it out on YouTube. Great memories. Paul Bearer, I've said on this podcast before, Kane is somebody who he would say yes to whatever you told him to do, and he would make it work. He probably learned that from Paul Bearer.
Mm-hmm.
He would, no matter how ridiculous, no matter how over the top, he was going to commit to it, and he was going to make it work, and he was going to sell it, and that's part of what made him so legendary.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And one thing, this is just come off the top of my head. I always bring Batman into these Undertaker things. He reminded me of Oswald Cobblepot. Uh-oh, did I lose my sound? He reminded me. Okay, can you? He reminded me of Oswald Cobblepot, who's the Penguin, if you don't know.
Wow.
So, yeah, that was one thing that kind of drew me to him, too. So, anyway, but...
So many great memories. I'm sure there's so much we've missed. Please let us know your favorite Paul Bearer moment and promo and memories. Hit us up at Talking Taker, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Be sure to follow us there. And be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast. Be sure to subscribe to YouTube. We got exclusive content that only comes out on YouTube. We shared a top 10 list, the top 10 matches of the Return of the Dead Man era, which this match was discussed on there, and some Paul Bearer memories are discussed there on YouTube. Lots of stuff coming out there that you don't find on your podcast feed. make sure you head to tpublic.com, pick up a Talking Taker t-shirt. Just, look, if they're not on sale one day, check back the next day, because they probably will be on sale. Then at that time, you can get a t-shirt for 30% off. Wear that t-shirt to the One Dead Man show, to your autograph signing, to your meet and greet with Undertaker. Take a picture with him in a Talking Taker t-shirt. Any of them, we will send you a free, special, exclusive gift from us here at Talking Taker. We'd love to see it. We haven't seen one of those in a long time. We'd love to see another one. Make sure you're following our friends, Collecting Dead Man podcast, going through all of the merch and memories of the Undertaker at Collect Up Dead. Make sure you're following Watch Along Tommy on YouTube on his channel. He just went to Raw this past week in Brooklyn. Had some vlogs going to that. He shared with me that they do, during the commercial breaks, they don't do a kiss cam. They do an Undertaker cam, and they go around the arena and people trying to roll their eyes back in their head, or doing the throat slash and stuff like that. He showed a video of that. Very fun stuff. Be sure to follow our friends Mike Prue and JV at the Bottom Line Wrestling Podcast. Dude, they just did a celebrity deathmatch episode talking about Stone Cold Steve Austin on Celebrity Deathmatch. Very, very fun. Brought back all the memories from 1998. Really enjoyed that. And, man, I'm trying to think of what else is there. Oh, yeah, Manscaped.com. Use the code TAKEREASY, 20% off and free shipping at Manscaped.com.
How long is the code good for?
It's right now it's good through March 7th, but hopefully if we get more of you to subscribe and to use it, this can become a long-term partnership. Just straight up, it's a temporary thing right now, but the more that we get to use the code in the first month, this can become a long-term thing for us. So we encourage you to do it by March 7th and really, really help out Talking Taker. Use the code TAKEREASY for 20% off. Manscaped.com, your entire order and free shipping. And we will be back here on April 1st with a look back 10 years later at The Undertaker versus CM Punk at WrestleMania 29. One of the last great matches of The Undertaker's career. Very excited to look back at this one with you, Travis.
Oh, yeah. I can't wait, man. Yeah, if you were there for any of these times we talked about tonight, especially at Mobile? No. Yes, if you were there when he came out at the ECW SmackDown taping, please let us know. Share with us your favorite Paul Bearer memories. Manscaped.com, take her easy. And also, those of you out there, stay safe. And as always, take her easy.
Oh, yes.